Senator Datuk Seri Abdul Wahid Omar, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Mr. Urik Zakau, World Bank Country Director for Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dr. Rahmat Bibi Yusof, Director General of Economic Planning Unit, Prime Minister's Department, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat datang. On behalf of the World Bank and Economic Planning Unit of the Prime Minister's Department, I would like to warmly welcome you to the launch of the 2014 Malaysia Economic Monitor, Boosting Trade Competitiveness. The Malaysia Economic Monitor, or MEM, is a biannual surveillance product of the World Bank, which detail out recent macro developments and challenges, as well as the medium-term prospects of the country. The June 2014 edition on the topic of boosting trade competitiveness is the 9th publication of the MEM series. To begin the event today, allow me to welcome to the podium Mr. Urik Zakau, World Bank Country Director for Malaysia, to present his opening remarks.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is the 10th edition of the Malaysia Economic Monitor, so hopefully most of you already know what's in the report and what you're going to hear. So that allows me to really talk not about the Malaysia Economic Monitor, but about what all of you really want to hear about, which is football. And in particular, the World Cup. Now, you wouldn't expect differently from a Brazilian, you will hear from Federico in a second, and from a German. You know, that combination is pretty good. We're going to meet in the semifinals, but we hope, let's put it this way, that we'll meet in the semifinal, and then only one of us will survive to the final. Too bad that we can't have a Brazil-German final. But anyway, you see, I hope that you all have been watching and cheering for the German squad like I was last night. But I want to talk briefly, and you will discover the connection with this talk in a second. What makes a competitive football team? And maybe we'll discover that this has something to do with trade competitiveness as well. So, first of all, a great football team matches its position with the talent. And much of this talent in a great football team is actually honed through extensive training. The players, they have to play smartly. And the coach, they spend a whole lot of time watching other teams' games and strategizing. And in the trade arena, the players are your entrepreneurs. They are new and old companies and small and large companies. And to become more competitive, your players, which is the entrepreneurs, they need to make and export more knowledge-based goods and services. Exports of services in Malaysia are a huge area of potential, and especially those modern services, the high-skilled ones, like health and education and professional services, oil and gas services, many examples. So in manufacturing, there's room for doing more of these higher value-added tasks, like design, research, and development. Malaysia, for example, assembles integrated circuits, the chips of which they go into computers and in mobile phones. It could do more of the design of the chips or fabricate the high-value silicon wafers, the actual little bits and components that go into the chips, the intelligent things, and capture that high-value added itself. All of these activities, they will require skills. And building these skills in your local players, these entrepreneurs, will require addressing the apparent mismatch between the skills produced by the education system and those demanded in the labor markets. Basic education is, of course, important, and that was the theme of our previous economic monitor. But it's also important to find more ways to bring Malaysian firms and universities together to enhance the quality and content of higher education. There's a survey that was done for this economic monitor in partnership with Talent Corp, and only half of the companies in this survey offer structured internship programs or practical programs that can help expose university students to a variety of career paths. Now, in some universities, virtually all the students actually do take advantage of such structured practical learning, but there's some others where that's not taking place, and only half of the firms offer it, so the other firms can't benefit from this. There are other examples of how firms on the one hand and universities on the other hand and vocational institutes can do this. And there are some good experiences from other countries. So this is one example how you can turn your soccer players, your football players into even more productive and skilled players that can match the demand from businesses. Second, football requires rules. It's important to have rules. The rules need to ensure a healthy but fair contest between the teams. And they need to ensure the health of the players. And the rules have to be the same for all teams. Now, in trade, these rules are the regulations that affect the ability of firms to access foreign markets, in both goods and in services. These rules, they have good and valid policy objectives, but they also have the effect to limit trade. In services, for example, there are regulations about the foreign equity limits for a firm that wants to provide services locally. There are also so-called behind-the-border regulations, such as requirements that retail stores, for example, open in underserved areas, or that retail stores employ a certain number of local workers. In manufacturing, there are important licensing requirements, consumer protection rules, health regulations. I'll give you another example from my own country. I happen to be from Munich, Bavaria. They also have the best soccer team in the world there, Bayern München. But now I'm going to talk about another specialty in Bavaria, which is beer. Bavaria is famous for its beer. And in Bavaria, we have something that's called a purity law. And that means that only 3 ingredients may go into beer. Only 3. Water, barley, and hops. Nothing else. And Bavaria restricted the sale of other beers that had any artificial ingredients, anything else in them. In Bavaria, you couldn't buy a beer in Bavaria that didn't meet these purity standards. And Bavarians claimed that there were health benefits for this. And if other beers were sold in Bavaria, then, the Bavarian population's health would go down. Do we believe that? Anyway, some very smart other European entrepreneurs, Heineken and others, they sued Germany in the European court. Germany lost. So now you can buy Heineken and everything else, other beer in Bavaria. So here's an example of a regulation that is, by purpose, a health regulation, supposedly. But actually, it limits trade, it limits competition. And Germany lost. Now, there are many such regulations in many countries. And to be clear, I think many of these rules are good rules. It's not all like the purity law in Bavaria. There are some phytosanitary standards for manufacturing which make a lot of sense. I think the issue is not that there are rules, there are good rules. The issue really is the application of the rules and the way that the specific way in which the rules are structured. Now, finally, let's talk about another thing in football. It's a great example about the importance of mutual recognition of professionals. Everyone recognizes a great player, and it doesn't matter where they have learned to play. My team, Bayern München, has players from many different countries around the world. We bring the best talent from all over the world, and that makes the team competitive. And that's not at the expense of local German players. As you can see, we have a fairly strong squad in this World Cup. Now, whether we'll win, we'll see. Probably Brazil will win, but anyway, we have a chance. But the point I want to make here is that in this economic monitor, we give examples of how you can think about this, not just for football, but also for doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, and so on. It's the same thing applies. So there's something called mutual recognition agreements, MRAs. And there's a chance for Malaysia to pursue that within ASEAN. Malaysia is going to be the chair of ASEAN in 2015. So Malaysia has a chance to seek commitments from other countries to advance this trade agenda, this trade competitiveness agenda. And so one of them is to push for such mutual recognition agreements with other countries, which will allow Malaysian professionals to export their services elsewhere. Now, it will also allow other countries to export their services to Malaysia, and that means that Malaysian firms and others who want to use and take advantage of those inputs can use them, just like Bayern München uses players from other countries. So this is a good example where there is room, where progress can be made, and we hope that this progress can be made and that Malaysia can take the lead in that and advance this agenda within ASEAN. Another example that's also in the report is the internet portal that you have on services regulations. And you can build on that because other ASEAN countries don't have that. And so if you seek commitments from other ASEAN countries to establish such an internet portal, it will help everybody. So here end the analogies with soccer, with football. And I'm using football and soccer interchangeably because I've been living in countries where they don't call it football, but soccer. So let me talk a little bit about the economic monitor beyond the points that I just made. The first chapter, because there's a lot more in this report. The first chapter analyzes recent economic developments and has our latest forecasts for the Malaysian economy. And in very few words, we believe that the outlook for this and for the coming years is favorable, and that fundamentally around 5% on average growth this year, a little more, next year a little less, on average 5% of the medium term. Trade and competitive trade is a source of strength and is a fundamental source for that growth, which is also why accelerating the improvement and further improvement in trade competitiveness will be such an important thing for Malaysia in order to grow even faster and become a high-income economy even faster. So fundamentally, that's what that first chapter is about. Then there's a second chapter, which is about this issue of matching talent and skills with the jobs and demands of businesses. And Federico will give you more detail in the presentation which follows. But before I do that, I really want to thank Minister Wahid and the whole EPU team for letting us work with you, for joining us in this event, and we greatly appreciate your support and your collaboration and cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zakal. Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Abdul Wahid Omar is able to grace the launching ceremony of the MEM with his presence. It is my privilege to invite Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri to the stage to present his official address.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Welcome back onto stage, Mr. Zakal, and Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dr. Rahmat for the official launch. MEM, boosting trade competitiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia Economic Monitor, boosting trade competitiveness.